I just had a big lead up all worked out in my brain. I hate when I do that. I should write things down, but I could never write as fast as I think. Anyhow, the I'm going to talk about me being wrong. So there's a chance that I'm wrong. There's always a possibility that you're wrong. See, people get in this mindset of religion. I want to try to talk about the Bible and science and open-mindedness. Like with pot, it's a good example because people have this stigma built into their head about pot, and it's just a fucking plant, right? And then Christians are the worst. But in the temple, they burned incense constantly, right? And they always used that word. And then they also made body oils. They called it the lamenting oil. When you look up the recipe for the one that they use, just a sec here. Yeah. When you get out the recipe, they have this Hebrew word. I'm sure I won't pronounce it properly, so I'll just spell it to you. Kaneh -BOSEM. I don't know what camera I'm using. That's probably backwards to you guys. And then they use cassia oil, olive oil, bottles obviously, myrrh, and sweet cinnamon oil. Olive oil being the base. Olive oil is a wonderful base. It holds better than butter and other things when you're cooking to make body oils. I'm not sure about coconut oil. I've never eaten it. I know it holds well for as a body oil, though. I like it better because it's a solid. Olive oil is a liquid, right? And I don't like that. Maybe if I was colored like a black person, like Jesus, olive oil would make sense. But I'm very white. Anyhow, so now the me being wrong. See, up to a certain point, leading into Christianity. See, the Bible, the way I learned the Bible, at first, in 2005, 2006 probably, I was shown this evidence, right? So what I was shown was how our science works. What is the evidence that leads to the conclusions that we make, right? And when you are shown the evidence without the foregone conclusion, and you're shown all of it, and you look at all of it, none of it leads to their conclusion. All the evidence leads to the Bible. But we're taught it in a slanted way. We're told that the Grand Canyon had to take billions of years for the Colorado River to cut the Grand Canyon out. Well, the Colorado River is lower in altitude than the top of the Grand Canyon. So it would have ran, turned, and went out to sea a different way, right? But what actually was there was when the flood happened, the ocean, what we call the ocean, wasn't there. What we call the mountains, they weren't there. Everything was flat and up higher, floating on top of the water, right? And then the ground ripped open, and that's the oceanic trenches, and the fountains of the deep started to pour out. And as that happened, the weight of the continents pushed down on all that water that was under there and forced the water up, like when you put your thumb over the garden hose and force the water up. And then that water went straight up into the atmosphere and spread around, and until it was all pushed out, until the pieces of land hit the bottom. And that also created the mountain ranges. When this ripped open and everything started to fall down, it pushed up, and that's why there's an equal and parallel mountain range to every oceanic trench. And then so those trenches opened up. As that was going on, at some point, just as the water shut off here and it squirted up, there would have been a minute or whatever, probably a day or two, when there was no water in this trench. The oceanic trench, the deepest part of the ocean, there was no water there. Maybe a little bit at the bottom, but it shut off. And there was water straight up, and it would have fell straight down, but not a lot of it, because it was going at such a speed and velocity that it would have been forced to the North Pole, iced, and came down at negative 300 degrees in order to freeze the mammoths, right? And so then that's what it takes to freeze a mammoth with grass still in its stomach. Now, in order to get it with grass still in its mouth, it probably would have been a little higher than that. But this would have created it. Anyhow, because that water going up would have became ice, and that ice would have been attracted to the poles and then came down at such a force. And that works on the globe just as well as it works on the flat Earth. It works just as good. It doesn't matter. So as those dropped, that's empty for a bit. But all that water's up there, and it's all going to come down, right? And it was already coming down. But as this water's forced empty, that's going to make all the water up on the hills full, right? So there's your 40 days, and the water would have been super deep everywhere, like deep enough that there's clams fossilized at the top of Mount Everest. We found them. We find them all the time. So if the water was that deep, and then that explains the pressure needed, that much water weight to actually make those fossils, to kill or just crush things alive and have enough pressure on top of them for them to fossilize rather than rot. We wouldn't have a fossil record if it wasn't for the flood. The things don't fossilize naturally. They only fossilized in that catastrophe, or in some catastrophe. But there had to be something like worldwide huge for there to get fossilized clams at the top of Mount Everest. Now, nothing up there would have eaten them, and they would have froze. So it's a good chance, like things could fossilize up there. But the rest of the world, no. Anyhow. Now as that water that's up top, it's going to just start dropping really quick and filling in the low spots, our oceans, and which drop the low levels. But this wouldn't happen like that. A bunch of it would happen like that. Like Noah was probably floating around, and all of a sudden he whoosh and like change location really quick. But over like a couple weeks or whatever, just being drugged down and the water dropping. They had a whole year in the boat. Um, and I'm sure, like, as that happened, there was probably some mountains that would have popped out immediately, right? And but the world's huge, so Noah wasn't near those mountains, but they would have started with greenery, making trees and growing things as these mountain ranges started to show first. So, and all that greenery and those trees and those seeds had a whole year or season to grow and get healthy before the animals got off the ark and the people, right? And then they landed on a piece of land, and I'm sure that he kept them in the ark for a certain amount of time even after they landed, pretty sure. And again, to let the plants grow and catch up. And now everybody always says, "Oh, fucking animals in the ark." Well, obviously they were all babies. When they went into the ark, he was probably taking, like, well, I wrote a book about it, and you know, not to give away my ending, but the animals the animals that he was in association with throughout the book come and have a baby or give an egg to Noah to take on the fucking boat. He's not taking the adult animals. Are you crazy? He's taking very newborns, like very, very newborns, not fucking the adults, not the parents. Unfortunately, and it's a sad ending to the book that way. Anyway, that's my twist. I don't like talking about it. Anyhow, I should finish the book. It's a children's book, but it's really neat. Better than Harry Potter. The water assuage, everything. Oh, the babies. Yeah, they would have been babies, right? So, and eggs. So even after the whole year, like a baby lion is just getting to probably 80% of its size when it's a year old, give or take. Some are big, and I'm sure every animal on the ark would have been, as an adult, an exceptionally big for their species, because it's not like he had a lion and a tiger and a zebra, or a lion and a tiger and a fucking leopard and a cheetah and a, like, no, he had a fucking cat, and that cat's DNA carried all the cats, right? And it probably had a dozen babies on its first litter, and they probably were all different cats in twins, right? Twins leopards, twin lions, twin, right? And it wouldn't have been like that, because all of that would have taken a little bit more time, like 3-4 generations, for things to get exact to what we have. They probably would have been less of the parent, and that's the way DNA works. Every generation loses a little bit of information, right? So the parent had carried the DNA to be a leopard and a lion, but a lion's DNA is like a brown eye and a leopard's like a blue eye. Well, if the other parent carries the lion as well, chances are it's going to come out, the kids are going to be mostly lions, right? But if the other parent only carries leopards, well, then it's going to be a healthy mix of lions and leopards, brown and blue eyes. That's just how it works, right? White skin and brown skin. I'm sure Noah had 3 sons. They were probably 3 different fucking colors. Why is that so hard? Like, and actually, they were probably like a base color at that time because we had the trees of life blocking the direct sunlight. So we wouldn't have needed the same melanin in our skin as we do now with the sun beating down on us, right? And it's like a bunny rabbit goes from being brown in the summer, and then when the sun changes, the little guy turns white for the winter, and then the sun changes again and he turns brown again. And now see what happens is we'll get a couple snow years and we'll have a whole bunch of bunny rabbits, and then we'll get a year where there's very little snow, and then the dogs will do really well, even if we get 2 years, because now the little white bunny rabbit is not camouflage in the snow because there is no fucking snow. So he's running around in the brown dirt as a white ball. He really sticks out to the dog, so the dogs can catch him. Whereas when they're camouflage, their thing is they run a few steps and stop and hope and they watch the dog or the predator and hope that the predator doesn't see them. And see, they're hunted by dogs, and dogs are black and white, so things blend in, and it's movement that they're chasing, right? Or a bright something that can stand out in the colors, so that when the rabbit runs its 5 steps, it stops, it disappears. Anyhow, if they can change color just by the amount of sun in the day, why are you racist people worried about all this other shit? Why is it, I don't know, that's my culture, and this is my culture, and that's mine, and this is mine, and that's mine, and that's yours, and you stay with yours, and you stay with mine, and mine stay with me, and you what? Dummies. Anyhow, the Grand Canyon would have been a left behind lake. See it? As everything pressurized down, the Grand Canyon got filled in by like sediment, mud, and shit, and but it still had all that water on top of it. So all that weight and all that pressure made it into really hard clay at the time. So then all the water runs off, and it probably, well, and it definitely, we found the traces of the shorelines of the 2 lakes that the Grand Canyon would have created. And those 2 lakes cover 3 states. They're huge. So when the Grand Canyon let go, those lakes drained through it fast and hard. And the evidence of that is that there's no delta at the mouth. All the sediment was taken out to sea. There's no drop-off point of all the Grand Canyon's huge sediment drop or whatever. A bullshit story that we're told. And there's rivers that run into the Grand Canyon and then turn greater than 90 degrees to run out to the ocean. See, if it was cut over time, gradually, like we're told, all the rivers would run naturally into it. They wouldn't run this way and then turn that way. And even if it was cut millions of years ago, then the rivers would have cut the corner by now, and they would have undercut the cliff, and eventually there'd be cave-ins, but they would have undercut the cliff enough to run a straight line, or a straighter line. They wouldn't do this turn. They take that turn out. That's what water does. It wears things out, wears down rock. Anyhow, so all that tells us that the Grand Canyon was cut quickly and recently, not what we're told, and that it held back enough water to change the level of the ocean. Not much by itself, but enough by itself. And then when I come through where I'm from, in the Maritimes, near Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, I'm from St. John, but in that area. And then you leave there and you drive up into Quebec. And when you're coming into Edmundston and into Quebec, all of a sudden, it's not the same landscape. All through St. John, it's these rolling hills, or all through the Maritimes, sorry, it's these rolling hills and big washouts between them. And then when you come into Edmundston, you got like a big bank on this side and a big bank on that side of you. And that runs for fucking hours when you go through Quebec. There's just two horizons and you're in a big valley like this. But right when you come into that, there's like a big clump and a big rock, like a mountain, like a hill. But it's just like the two horizons coming, and they're coming in at each other like this, and then they stop, and there's just like random chunks of the horizons left, and everything else is gone, washed out. And then you drive to Ontario through Quebec, and it's just these great riverbanks that are, 100, 200 feet deep. So there's another massive reservoir of water that was taken out of the oceans. Like, all this would have been held back. And I get a theory on this. It's funny, my theory on it, I think. So there was these great big lakes, and that Maritimes, that's Eastern Canada. Now, and there's these same kind of lakes and washouts. They're all over the world. These are just the two that I know of, or the one that's famous, and the one that I've actually been to. So the Great Washout happened there, but sorry, it didn't happen there. So that was filled in at one time, and all of Quebec was a lake, and right into Ontario, and then you could see where the horizon split at a certain point of Quebec, but then there was a third horizon there further down that goes all the way to into the rivers of Lake Ontario, right where I'm at. And you can follow it like it was one massive fucking lake. I bet you all the Great Lakes were probably one big massive lake. Anyhow, because it's so flat, right, everywhere else, all the way into the prairies and shit. So at some point it would have gained enough altitude, because we found the walking trail from Asia to Alaska. So that's on the western side. And so I think the Lost 10 Tribes, which we call the Native Americans, they found the walking trail as they got, because they kept getting pushed out. When they got pushed out of their land, they tried to go in like towards like Britain, that area, and everybody was like, no, you're not fucking staying here. Move it, beat it. And then they were pushed and pushed and pushed all through Germany and all that area, and pushed all the way to Japan, and then they disappeared. But we found the walking trail, but they're all like, oh, well, it's under the water, it's way under the ocean, nobody could walk that. That's billions of years old or some shit. And it was created by an ice age. Fucking dummies. Anyhow, so with all those lakes filled in over here, they just walked over. And I presume that Japanese were already here. They already had walked over and had been walking over for generations, I'm sure. And then showed them the trail, kind of thing. Well, you can just, follow me or whatever. Got a guide, and Israel walked over to here. There's land where there's nobody, right? We go over there and hunt and fish, and then we come back. Japan, that's probably what they did, right? It makes sense. And then, so Israel started to push through. But you're talking 10 tribes of Israel. You're millions of people, right? Hundreds of thousands at least. So, and then they had to walk, and all their cattle and everything. They're carrying all their possessions, and they're living in fucking tents, coming through the north. And then they come to this pristine, beautiful, fucking untouched lake. And the weather's getting nice again because they're getting further south and a little further inland towards the prairies. And they come to this lake shoreline. It's beautiful. Oh, everybody's going to jump in and have a fucking swim. Well, that raised the level of the lake enough that it cut a hole. That's all it takes. Once the water makes that first pass, then you can't stop it. And the Israelites, they were just like, oh, right on, nice swim. They all clean up and off they go. And as they walk away, the lake just starts going, which brings up the level of the ocean. And then they as they got down to Colorado and into those lakes, they did it again. They all jump in that lake, brings up the levels enough, gets over the edge, fucking cuts the Grand Canyon. All that water's gone. All new land for them to fucking explore and live on. And all those trees start growing in. And the lost city of Atlantis, the ocean comes up and buries it. Because now there's a whole fucking continent over here. All the trees start growing, everything fills in, and it would fill in quick from all that fertile land that's underneath the water for all that time. And then, it would have had all the sea grasses and all that shit, and then all that would have died quickly because it's in the sun exposed now, and it would rot and decompose and fill that fucking rich soil right up with stuff, and the trees would just shoot out of there. And they'd be getting all the sun they wanted because they're the only thing that has height yet, you know what I mean? So they just fucking grow. And yeah, and I'll bet you that's. And then Christopher Columbus back home, probably, I presume they were looking for the Israelites, trying to follow them down. They got gunpowder, and they were like, we will be able to wipe out these Jews. Because there's a whole history there between the different sects. They're called sects. The Pharisees and the Sadducees and all that stuff. They hate each other at the time. They hate each other. So, and what it leads back to, you can go back to the book of the Maccabees, and the Edomites were forced converted to Jews. And so there's the two hate, Sadducees and the Pharisees or whatever. There's the two hating sides of the Jewish faith, where there's the Edomites, who are the so-called Jews, and then there's the actual blood Israelites, and whatever, the other two tribes. There's Jacob. That leads back. Edom is actually Esau, who is Esau. He's the bad guy in the Bible, and they're the bad guy all throughout the Bible. And then when it gets to the book of Maccabees, there's a big war, and the Jews win, and they're like, you can either fucking move out of your land and go somewhere else, or you convert, circumcise, live like us, and do all the laws. And a bunch of them said, we'll do the laws. And they said from that day forward, they were no different than Jews. They're Abraham, Isaac, and then there's a split in the blood right there. Isaac had twin sons. So it's hardly a split in blood. Like, they're twins, right? So then it was just a split in one brother was worldly and one brother was godly. Well, then the worldly brother becomes godly. They're no different. But they fucking hate each other. And Esau is the hating side. Jacob just wants to get along and wanted the blessings from God. But Esau wanted those blessings from his dad. And so that's where the whole thing's fucking... Anyway, interesting. So, with all of that information, I knew that, and a bunch more. Like, I could keep going. I'm going to run out of time. So I'll wrap it up. But with all that information, I couldn't deny the Bible anymore. And look up Dr. Kent Hovind or Dr. Dino, and he's got like a 7-hour seminar. Watch them. He shows you that with heliocentric science, that the Bible makes way more sense than anything we're taught in the school system. All that shit's bullshit. It's just misinformation, brainwashing and shit. He doesn't go quite as far as he should. He stops at a certain point, stays heliocentric, but that's fine. It's better because it's baby steps. So that's where I started. That's where I said I can't deny this Bible, Jesus. And from there, I had other miracles in my life and had other things go down that were unexplainable, like just like drinking and driving and fall asleep at the wheel and still make it home. Shit like that. Just gifts that led me to where I am. And I've seen it not just in me, but in other things. And then I had a dream about my aunt one night that we had this conversation, and then I woke up and my mom was like, your aunt died a couple hours ago while you were sleeping. So just amazing things. And all this to say that I couldn't deny it anymore logically. So then I had to go and look at it spiritually. That it's a whole other video. So anyways, God bless you guys. I love you. Thanks for making it through. Subscribe, please. Look forward to making cooler videos about sailing and whatever adventures that we're doing, and be a little more entertaining for everybody. So until then, you're stuck with me blabbing. I'll start my blabbing on Rumble soon as they get their upgrade out, and I'll spare you guys all this shit. You can come on to Rumble and listen to me blab there. Anyways, God bless you. Have a great day.